Hello and welcome to FatbossTV. Today we're having a look at another 5-man dungeon that has been released on the Legion Alpha for testing, and today we're having a look at the Vault of the Wardens.
And before we start off, can I just say that this is hands down the best 5-man dungeon they've released on the Alpha so far.
Yeah, it is amazing. It's a very, very good dungeon.
And we're always really excited to test these new 5-mans, and sometimes we, you could argue that we're a bit enthusiastic sometimes when it comes down to new content. But this is hands down the best.
It is very, very good.
All the bosses in there, well, the majority of the bosses in there have some really interesting mechanics, and you could argue that if they were released as raid bosses, most people would actually be happy with that.
Yeah, it'll be alright.
It would actually be acceptable. But anyway, the Vault of the Wardens, why are we here? What's going on?
Now, this was the place where the Wardens locked away all of the things that would, endanger Azeroth, and it is the prison that you break out of in the second part of the Demon Hunter starting zone. The instance pretty much looks the same as the Demon Hunter starting zone, which is awesome, but there's also bosses in it that you deal with in the Demon Hunter starting zone. So in that starting zone, you're there to try and, put them back in their cages, whereas now they're super out of their cages and you're just there to kill them instead.
You failed pretty much.
Yeah, it's got a bit tits up in the old prison, so you're there to kind of clean house and take everyone down and in the end take out Cortana. So yeah, it's pretty exciting. Now, when you first enter the instance, you enter a big old great hall, and there's some pretty fucking horrible trash in here. You got some horrible demon casters that fear and deal a large amount of damage with their spells, as well as some fel guards that charge all over the place, dealing damage to random targets. It's just some pretty nasty stuff. However, it is manageable, and there isn't a hell of a lot of it. It's not like Dark Heart Thicket, where there's 6 years of this shit before you get anything interesting, so it's not too much. You can handle it, and it really does punish you if you pull too many of them, unless you're prepared for it. So it's quite a nice set of trash. Now, once you clear a bit of trash, you'll find yourself in a bit of a clearing where you'll fight a mini-boss. She charges around and sends glaives out in random directions, and at 50%, she then morphs into a hard-hitting demon that will send out fire at ranged targets while dealing ticking damage to the raid, and she's a little bit of a preview of what the first boss can do.
So after you take her out, you continue walking up the stairs and start taking out even more hard-hitting trash pack. Once again, these guys just fear you, they jump all over the place, they silence you. It's a bit of a pain in the arse, but like Alex pointed out, if you don't pull too much of this, it is manageable. It's not too difficult. And then yet again, after traveling through another corridor, you meet another great hall, and in this area, you will fight your first boss.
So Tirathon Saltheril, I'm just going to call him Tirathon, it's easier. He isn't too difficult to deal with. First off, he has an ability called Dark Strikes. This just buffs himself, so makes it so his auto attacks for 8 seconds will place a shield on himself if he melee hits a target without active mitigation. So the idea is that you have active mitigation up during these 8 seconds so the boss doesn't shield himself.
Which isn't ideal. Not many tanks can have it up for a full 8 seconds.
Yeah, you'll need a lot of pre-planning, especially with the tank nerfs that they've done.
Yeah, but I don't think it's really an issue. The shield that he places on himself, at least how it's scaled right now, is insignificant.
I didn't even realise until I read the dungeon journal. So
yeah,
it didn't really do too much.
The boss also has an ability called Furious Blast. What he'll do is just charge towards a player. While he's charging towards that player, he actually knocks everyone back that's sort of in his route, primarily melee, and then he'll just deal burst of AoE damage to the raid.
You can interrupt it, so it's probably a good idea that you do interrupt it, because the damage isn't awful. If you let all of them through, your healer would be annoyed, but you would live.
I mean, we
still.
did let one through just to see how much damage it deals, and it's not really that
and it leaves
much.
a tiny bit of fire on the floor, but considering you have such a big encounter area, and it's such, it seems like a key mechanic, deal with this blast, and it's kind of it kind of went through, who cares? So hopefully they make it so more fire spawns or something. But it gets interesting when he hits 50% because he would transform into one of 2 Demon Hunter Spect forms. Now this form that he changes into actually changes from week to week. So the first week he'll be going into Havoc, which is DPS, and the second week he'll be Vengeance, and he'll keep alternating between the 2. But unfortunately he was only able to see one, and this week it was the Vengeance form. Now in the Vengeance form he'll spawn glaives that will have a chain between them. If you get hit by these chains, you take pretty high damage, and these glaives start gliding around the room, and it is your job to move from them. It really reminds me of Sinestra.
Yeah, it's essentially the cutters from Sinestra, but they don't really target players. They just sort of roam around the room.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're really small because they're close together. Other times they cover half the fucking room.
Yeah, it's pretty scary.
You can actually disengage over these and leap and stuff like that, but you can't jump over them.
Yeah, we think
double jump might work.
Yeah, pretty sure that a Demon
Hunter...
Hunter...
maybe Goblin jump.
Yeah, stuff like that. So things that you actually use for movement. So it kind of gives Demon Hunter double jump, an actual thing that will be useful. So yeah, it's not bad that you can jump over it. Now, he also replaces his Furious Blast with Fell Mortar. This cast is uninterruptible, and instead of it dealing damage and spawning a bit of fire, it will send out 3 bolts that will hit the floor and spawn fire in those locations, and they don't seem to despawn.
Yeah, which might suggest it's almost some form of soft enrage. You have to kill the boss before the room just fills up with too much fire.
Well, especially because each time he casts it, he spawns 3 more patches.
Yeah.
The first time it was 3, next time it was 6, and then we killed him before we got too scared. This makes it pretty hard because there's fire around the place. It's dealing quite high ticking damage, as well as you got to move from these glaives. It's really movement based, which I loved as a hunter, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was actually very, very fun, and it's all to do about pre-planning your movement. While this is on, also the boss is taking 25% less damage, so it takes a little longer to deal with him. So yeah, it's quite close, but it's good fun.
So after you finished him off, you then enter a small area which is full of imps, and a big old mother blocking the door. You need to kill her off, and then you enter a very, very large area with a massive elevator that takes you down, like, I don't know, what, 2 floors or something?
Yeah, while you're going down, you get to see other parts of the, like, the prison that you're in, which is really cool.
Yeah, it
you don't
looks
get to
amazing.
go there, like, it's invisible and everything, but at least it's kind of like, oh, it's a big old prison. It's quite cool looking.
And then once you get to the bottom, you find yourself in an area where you'll find the next boss on top of a staircase.
Now, this Inquisitor boss doesn't really do too much. He actually only has one ability called Sap Soul. This is a cast that will place a debuff on all players, and this debuff causes your next ability that you use within 15 seconds to have its cooldown increased by 10 seconds. So it's like super similar to the Trash Before Grand Empress Shexir in Heart of Fear, where you just, if you get the debuff on you, you either use it on like a really trash ability, I don't know, like Flare or something.
Yeah. However,
or you
like,
just don't cast.
the debuff itself is kind of irrelevant because the cast is super long and it's interruptible.
Yeah.
And the effect that's placed on you is dispellable.
Oh, right, okay. So there you go. So generally just interrupt it, and if it all goes horribly wrong, then you can always dispel maybe a key target.
Yeah, I mean, you can
uses
master
ability.
spell. I mean,
Yeah.
your master spell is going to have a longer cooldown, but...
Hopefully it'll only ever go off once anyway.
Yeah, exactly. But apart from that, the boss didn't do anything else apart from spawn ads. But that sounds boring, but it really isn't. At 70% and at 40%, the boss teleports to one of these, like, cells and releases prisoners. But the prisoners that he does release are really, really interesting because they're mobs that have been used throughout the history of WoW, primarily in raid instances and stuff.
Yeah.
The first prisoners are actually from the Blood Furnace, you know, the old 5-man dungeon in TBC. He releases a load of engineers that just lay bombs on the ground and silence people. And there's also a Fell Guard that just deals physical damage and just constantly drops fret, which is
It's
really
so
frustrating. And he just charges around. It is really, really irritating. You've got to pretty much kill that Fell Guard off first because it's just such a pain in the arse. The second set of prisoners are the guys from Mogoshan Vaults. You have the Quillin that stack up the Petrify on the group. We assume that just like how it was in Mogoshan Vaults, it will stun you for a very, very long time once it reaches maximum stacks, but we didn't actually see that. However, there are also 2 Secret Keepers that also apply a separate stack that once it reaches 10 will stun you. We did actually get hit by that. I didn't dispel it, we just let it go through. But that only stunned you for 3 seconds.
Yeah, it's not too bad. Of course, it's not very nice, especially because you get like other bits of trash around the place hitting you and stuff like that. So it's not the end of the world if it does go through.
But ultimately, this boss was just those 2. In the other 2 prisons, apparently there is the lingering corruption ads, which is the ads before Shower of Pride and Siege of Orgrimmar. The ones that when they die, they put a debuff on someone. If you don't dispel it, they explode.
Or if you do dispel it, they'll all explode.
Yeah, you remember that trash. I think everyone remembers that fucking trash. And then lastly, it's the trash from the Old Kingdom. The very, very last part, you know, we have the mobs that do the shadow crashes.
Yeah. And
The faceless ones or whatever the fuck they're called.
Yeah, they've got like fears and stuff like that as well, so they're a little bit pumped up to make them a bit more scary. But yeah, that's it. As long as you can deal with those sets of trash, you just need to know how you have to deal with each set. So you got to like, oh, we got to focus the dog, or we got to focus the Fell Guard. As long as you can do that, the boss is a pile of piss because all you do is interrupt him. You do have to be careful with big AoE effects like barrage and stuff like that though, because there's these like little fell doggy things around the sides of the room that you can easily pull, and they explode when you kill them.
And it's just even more trash.
Yeah, it's just a pain in the ass. But just be careful and you should be absolutely fine.
So after you kill that boss off, you do have 2 choices on where you want to go, and both ways will lead you to a boss. First off, we're going to talk about Ash Golem. Now this big molten fella is encased in ice, and this is one of the enemies that you actually help to recapture during the Demon Hunter starting zone using countermeasures in the room. As soon as you enter the room and you get close enough to him, the ice will melt and the fight begins.
Now this boss has a lot of fucking fire. There's a lot of lava. There's 2 ways you can spawn it. One of them is something called Lava Wreath, where he will spawn a patch of fire on a ranged target. Then this patch splits into like 8, like little multiple patches that then start moving around the room. And he also has something called Fissure, where he'll spawn a line of fire from the middle of the room to the edge. And then that line of fire will start rotating around the platform, and it's your job to avoid it. And both of these types of fire can be absorbed by players by running over the patches. This will remove the fire from the encounter area, but it will put a big dot on you.
Which
that
stacks.
Yeah, so like 1 stack is okay, but 3 or 4 stacks, that's a lot of healing your healer's going to do.
It's very nasty.
It's really, really horrible. So apart from avoiding fire, the boss will also lob out a volcano, which will do raid-wide damage when it spawns. It will then start spawning adds out of the volcanoes called embers. Now, embers cannot move, and they'll just spam cast sear on random targets, and it doesn't really do that much damage. However, if they absorb any lava on the ground, they will detonate, dealing a large amount of damage to everyone. So you either need to kill the embers as soon as they spawn, which isn't very hard because they do have very little health, or you need to absorb the lava that is going to hit them. And more of these volcanoes spawn, so if you leave this for a long period of time, it becomes a nearly impossible task because there's so many of these adds all over the place. However, you can activate countermeasures that will freeze the entire room, remove all the lava and volcanoes, as well as freeze the adds and the boss. Once the adds and the boss are frozen, they'll take 100% extra damage and they cannot cast anything.
One interesting thing about when they do become frozen, it does actually create line of sight.
Yeah.
Which is a bit of an issue, like having to run around them to try and heal particular people and stuff. But if you're like near each other, it's absolutely fine. I can see it being maybe a little bit of an issue for range DPS. If like a load of those searing adds are in front of you and they turn into ice, then you can't damage the boss.
Well, you should be really killing the adds at this point anyway. You do need to clear them out because lava will be coming back in after the boss reheats the room.
That's true.
And the thing is, you've got to be very careful is that if you are in the boss's hitbox when he becomes iced, it will knock you back. As soon as he becomes ice, because it needs to make the physical barrier and you can't be within it, and that can knock you off the platform.
Which
that happened
is what
to me.
happened to you, yeah.
But luckily you get put back on, you get a little debuff on you that reduces movement speed or some shit. It's not the end of the world, but yeah, you got to be a little bit careful because you're losing time where you can be dealing damage to the boss.
And after those 10 seconds of him being in an ice cube, he comes back, the fight repeats.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed this fight.
It was really fun.
There's so many things going on, and it's simple. It's simple as hell. Don't stand in fire, kill adds. But the way that all the mechanics sort of work with each other makes it really interesting.
Yeah, and of course you've always got the countermeasures available because that does come back off cooldown.
If like everything's going wrong, maybe people are taking too many fire stacks or whatever, you could just hit that. You can just like chill.
Yeah, literally.
Get some damage. Yeah, you can chill. Yeah, way puns. You can chill, get some extra damage on the boss, or kill the extra adds or whatever. Really, really cool fight. Really, really enjoyed that.
Now, after finishing him off, you need to go in the other direction and you need to meet the other boss, which is Glaser. Now, his encounter area looks amazing. It's really, really cool. It's got like a Mogushan Vault sort of feel to it. And he's a big old Duramu, which is always a plus in my books because I love that model. But once again, you helped capture him in the Demon Hunter starting zone. Of course, you didn't do a very good job because he's out now and you've got to kill him. But you do use the mechanic that you used in the Demon Hunter starting zone in the encounter to make sure that you can finish him off.
So this guy has a couple of abilities. He has Pulse, which just periodically sends out orbs that fly across the room. Once they hit the edges of the room, they hit the walls, they will actually bounce back. If a player gets hit by them, they just take some damage, but the orb does get absorbed. But one interesting thing about these orbs is that they can actually hit the boss.
Yeah, I think that's a way of like trying to remove them from the fight, but the thing is, if you just ignore it, the orbs eventually hit the boss or a player anyway. We kind of just ignored it. And
the orbs didn't really seem like a big deal.
You don't need to deal with them that much at the moment, at least.
He'll also do Lingering Gaze, which just sends out a patch of goo underneath a player and just deals ticking damage. You just move out the shit, simple as that. But the main thing with this encounter is that he'll go into like a phase where he becomes immune and starts casting a beam towards the side of the room. At the exact same time that this happens, 3 mirrors will appear out of the squares in the ground that you can click on to rotate them. And what you need to do is position them all in such a way so that the beam is pointed towards the boss, and that's what breaks the phase. Now, while you are trying to position these mirrors, you can actually get hit by the beam.
Yeah.
And it does do quite a large amount of damage. And on top of this, the boss is doing ever-increasing ticking damage to the entire group, which is totally unavoidable. So you got to make sure, of course, that you do this as quick as you possibly can, which was easy for us because we're on TeamSpeak, but you're in a random group.
Oh, that's going to be awful.
This is going to be a bit special, I think. Especially when the boss is immune, you can't just nuke him down. But that's it. Once you've managed to position the mirrors, it hits the boss, it breaks the phase. He then starts taking increasing damage. It's about 100% over like 10 seconds or something. So it sort of makes up for the time that he wasn't able to do any damage to him.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it. The boss just repeats from that point. So again, even though there's not an incredible amount of mechanics,
it's still very fun.
It's still very, very fun. It was amazing to do.
Now, once you've killed both of these bosses, another room will open with an elevator in it. This will take you way below the jail cell into a near pitch black cave. Now, at the side is a light source. What you do is you right-click it, and this will give you a buff that will give you a light source around you. You will then use this to try and traverse the cave. There's also loads of enemies that are like shrouded in darkness, and the only way you can even attack them is by going close to them with a light source. And if you got this near them, they also take extra damage as well. Interestingly, you can use an extra action button to throw the light source around, but it seems really pointless. I guess it's if someone accidentally picks it up and they want to give it to someone who actually knows what the fuck they're doing and where they're going.
Or you could use it to like light up trash before you pull it or something.
Yeah, maybe if you want a CC or something like that.
It seemed like really buggy. Every time we threw it, it seemed to just despawn and stuff.
Yeah, it's very weird. But this place is so dark. It reminds me of the April Fool's joke that they did, where there was like, oh, we're going to release a pitch black dungeons ages ago. And loads of people were like, that would be a really good idea. And they were like, oh, it's supposed to be a joke. And the thing is, they've actually put it in, even though it's from a very small amount. Going through this place for the first time where you can't really see too much. You can see a little bit, just in case you get lost and you get separated from your party somehow. But it's so fun to go through it. You can't see the trash properly, and then you get loads of spiders come out of nowhere, which don't really do anything. You got some succubus-looking things.
The actual trash itself is really easy to deal with.
Yeah, it's kind of a pile of piss, but it's so fun. I love this section of the instance.
Like, my only complaint about this area is that I think it could have been darker.
Yeah,
if they made it so it was literally pitch black, and the only way you could see is by having this light source, like, you know, what they did with the April Fool's thing, then that would be amazing. And there's also certain things down there, like, as you sort of make your way through it, it's pretty linear. There's no like caves or anything like that. There is only pretty much one way to go towards the last boss. But before the last boss, there's a big door.
Yeah.
That door is lit up even though there's no light source. It would be nice if that was just pitch black and the only way you find the door is actually by getting to it.
Yeah, and the thing is, which is really good, what they did do very nicely is that other light sources work to reveal mobs. So flares, like luckily on our second run through we had double hunter, and using these flares to reveal the mobs was awesome, and the flares look really sick. I imagine things like campfires might even work.
That'd be hilarious.
I'm not sure what
get your toys out, get your grim campfires out.
And stuff like that. It'll be so cool. But yeah,
you get your fireworks.
This whole area was absolutely amazing. But unfortunately, that's kind of where it stops when you get to the last boss, because she's a little bit buggy. But before you get to her, there's a long old bridge, and as you cross it, your light source is removed from you. I'm not sure. There's like these dark traps, apparently. You can't see them, and it just flat out removes it.
Yeah, we tried to find the traps maybe using flares, and we had no success with that. Maybe a rogue can find it, or it might just be simply what it's been designed for, just to remove all the light sources, because the light sources are actually needed on the fight. Yeah,
and there's one in the encounter area, so maybe they only want you to have one of them, because you get two of them as you traverse, so they don't want you to have three, they want you to have one. But yeah, you get to the last boss, and it's time to fight Cortana. And as I said, she isn't very good. Well, at the moment, she's just very unfinished, and she's missing quite a few abilities that are listed in the dungeon journal. But she's still working a little bit, so we can have a look at her.
Yeah, you still get an idea of the fight. I mean, she has something the tanks need to deal with, which is just like a stun combo, where the tank gets stunned and then it gets knocked back. And this can knock tanks off the side of the platform.
Yeah.
However, a ghosty thing will catch you and bring you back up, which I guess is nice. But it does take you a while to actually come back up. You drop down pretty far. Yeah. So while you've been knocked off, your DPS are going to be tanking instead.
Yeah, and she hits hard.
Yeah, which isn't great. However, one of her main abilities is something called cruel traps. What she'll do is that she'll place a circle on the ground, and that circle is then linked to a player. If that player is stood outside the circle, they'll take ever-increasing ticking damage. Yeah. However, if you stand inside the circle, you'll take absolutely no damage from it whatsoever. But the problem with these circles is that 5 spawn in total, but you don't get 1 each. Some people can get like 3, which is what happened to Noble. He just got 3 and then that was it.
And the thing is, they was all spread out. It wasn't like a Venn diagram. There wasn't one place where you could stand and you'll be in all 3 of them.
Yeah,
there were like 3 all around the place.
It's like, so how do I heal that? Like, I couldn't keep them up. So
I think the idea would be is that each player gets 1, maybe. That seems to be a much better way.
It seems fairer, at least.
Yeah, because at the moment it's kind of like, will I just randomly die or not? So yeah, let's hopefully they fix that. But at the moment it's a bit buggy.
On top of this, you'll also send out glaives that just deal damage to anyone that's hit. This is a bit of a nasty combo if you're forced to be stood in a circle, but the damage from the circle is a lot more significant than the glaive, so it's probably a good idea just to get hit by the glaives.
The thing is, the glaives are really buggy as well. I've had ones pass through me, and it's like, okay, don't get hit, and then it like comes through me on the way back, and then it does hit me, and then sometimes if it just reaches the boss and hits no one, then it explodes on the boss, but then other times it doesn't. Yeah. This ability isn't very clear, And neither is, like, she doesn't show you which way she's going to lob it. She just lobs it out. And sometimes you just can't avoid it at all. Especially in a melee heavy comp, it can just straight away hit the melee and just deal a ton of damage to them, which is not very nice.
And the thing is, it also applies a debuff that increases the damage you take.
Yeah.
Which is really, really nasty.
Especially on the tanks. She does hit hard.
Yeah, she hits very, very hard. So yeah. But apart from that, they're like her core mechanics. She doesn't really have any other abilities apart from around 60%. She will shadow step away and just become invisible. And it's now your job to use the light to find her so you can actually bring her back and kill her off.
Yeah.
The problem with this is that the light just despawns halfway through the encounter.
Yeah, like if you don't pick it up at the start, it will despawn. If you're knocked off the edge with it, it will despawn. And sometimes you'll be holding it and it's kind of like, no, never mind, I'm gone now.
Yeah,
so it's a little bit odd. And the thing is, the first time we went through this dungeon, we didn't have anyone with a light source. We didn't try a campfire, but we had no one with a light source. So the boss just went invisible and then just starts absolutely destroying your tank, and you've got to get her out as soon as you can, but we had no way of doing it. We had to run back through all of the fucking instance to get to the first light source by that elevator, and then bring it back to the boss just so we can get her out again.
While you were getting destroyed.
Yeah, while I was getting destroyed as a Death Knight and I had nothing to Death Strike. So it was a very, very sad time. I assume, once again, it's just going to be a bit buggy. The light will most likely stay around, but this whole phase was just irritating. And the second time we just had a hunter, we had no light, we just flared immediately and she came out. So, yeah, we assume that that's going to be fixed, but that's it. She comes out and she just does the same thing again. There's supposed to be a mechanic where she like spawns an invisible ad and it deals like damage to everyone, and the idea is you got to try and reveal it, you got to try and find it in the room, which sounds awesome, but it just wasn't there at the moment. I'm really glad it wasn't, because we wouldn't have been able to reveal it anyway. So yeah, that's the last boss, and when she dies, instance is done. It's a very good instance. It does need touching up, but once again, it's alpha. This instance has been out for less than 24 hours, and they patch it a lot as it goes along. So
yeah, especially early when it's first been released, if there's any significant problems with bosses, they usually fix pretty quick.
Yeah, so like in a week, it could be completely like fixed and absolutely fine, but it is a very, very good instance. I absolutely loved the dark part. I've been wanting a dark part for a really long time, and ever since I've seen that April Fool's joke, and then the fact that they put it in, even though it could be better, like it would be nice if it was a bit more of a maze, or this is asking a lot, but maybe even if it's randomly generated or something, so each time it's harder.
That's
but
not going to happen, is it?
It's not going to happen. I'm asking for a lot, but yeah, I think that would be absolutely amazing. But yeah, very, very cool dungeon. Really, really cool.
But that's all we got time for in this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy this little preview, then please do drop us down a like. Helps us out a lot. And make sure you subscribe. More content on its way.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.